Okay, let's get started. Welcome to, thank you for joining our new monthly professional topic meeting, I guess, webinar. And what we're going to do in these meetings is that we're going to talk about, well, today we're going to talk about lead time, but every month we'll pick up a different topic. Let's take a look at some of those topics that some of the professionals have already recommended that would like to teach these things. And the whole focus here is to provide you supply chain items of interest that are practical tips and techniques is what we're doing. So these are not the concepts, the big theories and all, they're actually the implementing them to solve real-time problems. So as you can see on the chart here, got quite a bit of list, a long list of topics. However, if there's something that's not listed there that you would be interested in seeing, then please provide that to me in chat or send me an email. I prefer it in chat if you could, so that we can start working on it. Again, we want to provide practical tips for you, things that have worked for us, for other supply chain professionals, within other organizations. Questions about the educational webinars before I progress a little bit further into the webinar itself. And again, these were the topics that we want to do. Well, there's a lot of different ones. So let me just, for those that don't know me, let me just introduce myself very briefly, a 30-second commercial, I guess you could say. I've been around for a long time, 45 years actually of supply chain work or operational management. My specialties are really listed, as you can see there, and that is turning around operations, getting processes improved and all. And I do some training too, of course, do some training. If you notice, I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. My whole focus is always on painting operational excellence to make operations faster, smarter, and cheaper. So that's me. You can find out more about me by just calling and talking to me, I guess, or go to my LinkedIn profile. Or we still have people joining us. That's very good. So let's get started directly with the concept. Lead time concept. Now, these are things that I've used in the past. I've been modified a little bit based upon the changing of years and learning from your mistakes and all. But let's just talk about the concept. And I'm not going to talk about it. Well, I'm going to talk about some key concepts, best practices at a tactical or strategic level. I'm really going to focus on the operational level, the things we have now. Now, why is this subject important now? Well, some of y'all who have talked to me and talked to other people have said lead times got real long after COVID, and we saw that, and it's coming down a little bit, but there's still some other issues. So I want to talk about how do you get it further down, reduce the lead times. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's jump right into it. Total lead times, as you can see here, includes delivery time, manufacturing, and supplier time. The focus of this webinar is on supplier time, so it's down here. But you have the three. And really, when you look at total lead time, what you're trying to do is shrink all of that so that when the customer comes in and says, I have an order for you, that starts the clock. And the sooner you can get it to them, the better it is, typically. Typically it is. By the way, if you have questions or anything, you can ask at any time. But I've also set up about 15 minutes at the very end for additional questions. Before we get into it, let me ask you a question. Have you had formal training and continuous improvement in Lean? And the reason I ask this is the foundation that we're going to use to improve the operation. And when I mean formal training, I'm talking about some classroom and some practical. So if you would, in chat, raise your hand or on your picture, let me know if you've gotten some formal training. And the reason for that, if you have formal training, I have you do some presentation today, I guess, a part of this. Help me out. Let me see, we got a couple, 3 or 4 here. Couple, very good, very good. Give you another 10 seconds. So if you had formal training, throw your hand up for me so I can see it. I'd appreciate it. Okay, if you know, vast majority of the people of us have not had formal training. I would tell you to go out and get it, and it's not something that needs to be done in a certification class. You don't need to be a master black belt or any of those things. What you need to do is just get knowledgeable, and there's so many sources to obtain that. And if you would like more information about how to do that at no cost, very low cost for lean training, continuous improvement training, just send me an email, and I'll answer it and give you some guidance. Very good. Thank you very much. No, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, to visit a friend of mine down at Oak Island in North Carolina, and they have a house similar to this, except this is only 1 story above the sand, and they start off at the sand. That's floor 0. They don't call that floor 1, I guess, more like in Europe. But they go up 4 levels high and all. And my question to them was, how did you put in this house? Because I needed to understand, you know, these wooden things, while it seems to be a lot down at the very bottom, I would be concerned about that if I lived in this house, because you get the beat surge and all this during the hurricanes, and just do a windy day, you get all this water coming in. How is it that this wood would hold up? And he said, well, I don't have wood. I have things on the outside that look like wood, but in fact, they're very, steel and concrete and everything else. So we started talking more and more about it, and I realized that in his case, that's really what how I'm going to present this course. I'm going to talk about not the foundation, which is up here, that the house is built on. The house is really built on principles, and the principles we're going to talk about, these lean time principles, are these stilts. And you got to have great stilts. You can have a great foundation up here and a great house built upon it, but if the storm comes and the principles aren't correct, the house is going to fall. So let me refer back and forth to this and all. And then the foundation itself, the basic floor, I'm going to talk about that in terms of lean things that we need to do, principles, concepts, key concepts, best practices. And then we're going to build upon that, talking about a supporting structure, the pillars to support that. And this is very similar. This is exactly the same as lean. And that is, you start off with the basics, and these are the stilts in the case, and it's really lean principles. And for those that have had some training and experience in lean, yeah, you got all these different things you do, but the key is, and the focus of lean is to get rid of waste. And as you can see here, our focus is removing the waste. But what you see is these checks up here by 3 categories, which are typically, you could have problems in lean time with all of them, but the major items that you're trying to alter is weighting, transport, and motion. Transportation and all. Yeah, you have some effect on others, but those are the 3 key. So that is our stilts down here. We're going to make sure that we build this foundation on a solid base of stilts, and we call it here lean principles. Secondly, now that we have the stilts in the ground and we have the ability to support a good foundation, let's build this foundation. So the first part of this is really one of partnership collaboration, because remember, most of the actions in the lean time are external your location or your company. Yes, you got some internal things I'll point out in a minute, but most of it's external. They're a supplier. And that supplier has suppliers and suppliers and suppliers. So you really have to develop this partnership collaboration. And you'll see, I'll list that a couple of times on the same chart, because it is so important to have that. Now, remember, in the partner collaboration, internal and external of the company, that some partners are more important than others. And all. For example, you would not have supplier relationship management with every supplier. Boy, you wouldn't have enough time or people to do that. But you would focus on the most important things. And that's what we're going to do in this lead time reduction. Secondly, we're going to develop to make sure we have good supplier performance management. And that is what they say they're going to do. We're going to measure that. And we're going to measure it based upon a couple of things: what's in the purchase order, what's in the contract, and what's in what I love to call and like to have is a service level agreements. Now, a service level agreement, for those that are not familiar with it, is nothing more than an addendum to the contract, to the purchase order. And the reason you have it as an addendum in many cases is that while you set the specifications in the contract, you really want to reinforce it with an agreement on service level. Or you put in the contract if you have time to do that. But that service level agreement is key, because it's not a mandatory thing that you dictate in the contract. It's more of these are the things we have agreed upon. And it's not the procurement people agreeing upon it, it's the operators. So it's just really that service level agreement. So these are the foundations that you have to set up. Now, how do you do that? All of them have key concepts, best practices, best ways of doing it, terminology, technologies, and all that stuff. So you got to dig into that. Now, do you need to be an expert in all of these? No, but you need to know a little bit about them. And that's really what CSCP can help you with. Start that down that road. But you can get real smart in these things. Now, all of this is around a project typically. So project management may be another one of these foundations. Questions about the foundation side before I talk about the pillars? And by the way, when we get through with this setup of slides, build up of slides, a few more slides, we'll get into a practical exercise of how to do this. So I'm just kind of giving you kind of I was going to say a foundation, but that's not the proper word. I'm going to give you a full view of the scope, I guess, of it. Now, the pillars, the things you have once you built the foundation to really optimize this, or some things you have to consider. Now, the first one is this sourcing. How are you, is it going to be offshore, near shore, onshore, outsource? Most of us don't own our own suppliers, but you need to decide that. And it's not the decision of it, but to understand that the further away the supplier is, the harder it is for the longer the lead time is. So you really need to go back and look at that. Now, the other thing is the movement of it, because the further away it is, it's going to take you longer days, no matter what mode of transportation you use. If you use sea like most of us, if it's been offshored, then that can be a number of days, 40, 50, a lot of different days, depending on the mode of marine movement, carrier movement. The closer it is, the easier it is. But don't forget, as you know, I should say, that it costs more when it's further, when it's closer to you. So it's a trade-off. Optimizing the movement. Another one is what I call strategic strategy on buffers. MRP priority planning has been based upon a push system, is always based upon keeping your inventory at the lowest level. And we misunderstand that. We think that means very low inventory. Well, how well has that worked in the last 2 or 3 years since COVID? Not very well. So the whole idea is to set up buffers, not safety stock, buffers along the process so that you can get things faster, decrease lead times and response and be able to respond quickly. So you got to do that. When you look at DDR MRP, another version of planning, which is nothing more than using strategic buffers, that's one of the key points on it, is that you've got to have buffers in the right place. Think about it. Think about theory of constraints for those that have had some reading or formal education of theory of constraints. You always put buffers in front of the constraint or the bottleneck, depending on what the situation is. You always put it there. Yeah, you always have it at the supplier, okay? And you always have it at the other end when you're shipping it. But the key is that the real big two keys, I should say, locations are right in front of the constraint and at the beginning of the process. Don't forget, when you're ordering stuff, it's not at the process already. It's not at the beginning of the supplier. She has to go get that stuff. They have to go to their tier 1 providers. So these are 3 of the things. Another thing you have to consider is maybe you need to change your order pattern. If you order it more frequently and have it on hand, or at least have it in movement toward you, when that order comes in, you have some of it that has a shorter lead time. So smaller, more frequent orders. Well, that was just a summary of the items. By the way, anybody wants to implement this and needs some more guidance, no problem. Just give me a call or something. I'll give you additional details, help make you smart to be able to do this if that's something, or enhance the skills you currently have. I want to bet you much of this is enhancing skills you currently have. So let's get to the practical side of this. How do we use all these different things and all? And this is not a huge project where it takes you months and years to get to this point. It doesn't work that way because you got to solve problems today. So that's what we're going to focus in on the latter part of this. Are there any questions before I get to the practical examples? If so, put them in chat. Or speak up. You can also just speak right up. Michael, I believe you have a question.
Sorry, no, I still just had my hand up, so.
Oh, no worries.
How
you doing, by the way?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Very good. And no questions, no hands, I don't think. Hold on for a minute. We got so many people, I have to go down 4 sheets to find you. So let's get to the practical example. This is really why you're here, I think. Okay, let's set up the example by just kind of going over who our partners are in this reduction, internal and external partners. And as you can see, I've named a couple of them here, and you may have more. In fact, many of us have more partners in this, but the concept that I will demonstrate is exactly what you would use no matter who the partners is in your lead time. Okay, so we have our own operations. The operations side basically determines there's a need. They get an order in, they evaluate, determine the net requirements, and then we go off and order that stuff through procurement typically. Depending on the cost level, finance may get involved. For normal items within a certain range, finance doesn't get involved, but other times they do. And then it goes to the supplier, and then the supplier goes to their suppliers and all. And when they finally get everything together, they have movement. They send it to us, movement toward from tier 2 to tier 1 supplier, and then processing there, and then movement on to us. And then we have receipt. Those are the major components from my perspective. But before I go on with this, let me just answer a question here. Scott mentioned that the smaller, more frequent orders will increase costs, and he says, correct, and that is correct, but you got to balance the trade-off. And also, depending on how you buy it or what your agreement is with the supplier, sometimes the price is not as high as you may think it is. In my day and a couple different companies I've worked for, we just gave them an estimate of the year and an update of what our forecast would probably be. Anticipated purchases is what we called it, or something like that. And as we got closer to the event, then we firmed it in with a purchase order and the like. But that being the case, another thing you can do is use a blanket order. You can use a lot of different things. It all depends on your how solid your forecast is. You know, I think you know that. But you can trade some trade-offs, depending some costs, depending on the situation. But you got to negotiate. If not, if you use costs only and not service and lead time, what happens is that it's going to cost you less, but your lead times will get longer, will be long. You can't allow that. It can get out of control. And by the way, when I talk about this a little bit later in the charts, I'll talk to you. You don't do this for everybody. You only do this for the most important stuff and the most important suppliers that provide product and services to you. Those are the ones I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on the others that are not so critical. So costs will be relative to the relationship that you have, relative to the projected and past volume. So costs will come down more in line. Yeah, you're going to pay a little more. But what's more important, cost of service. Hopefully that helps, Scott. We'll talk about that though a little bit later. So getting back to the chart here, these are your partners. Well, let's look at the amount of time they take to do work. And I'm just going to throw some numbers out based upon some situations that I've been in. And I've been in numerous situations, lead time, 5 different companies that I had either responsibility or involved with lead times in some way, you know, both in manufacturing as well as distribution. So I came up with some cycle time that was realistic then. That's realistic. And cycle time is the amount of days that is actually under their control. You know, operations, how could operations spend 5 days on something? We identify it and we order it. Well, that's not really true. What happens is that you get the order in, you receive the order, you accept the order, you tell the the people that have bought it, that's when your clock starts. It doesn't start at the tail end when you've done all your planning and determine your net need. So you got to figure out how do you reduce that without any risk because of it. So 5 days there, procurement, 10 days. This company, and a lot of companies like this, they have different levels of approval or disapproval. Finance, supplier itself. Don't forget the supplier time accounts for their tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, and all that to get all of it to them, for them to do their process. They may be actually producing some parts for you, and then they'll sell you the assembled parts, or it could be raw material, but they get it from somebody. They don't own the places those materials coming from. And then you got actual movements. Oh my God, especially overseas. And then you got receipts. Everybody forgets about receipts. You know, an order comes in and it sits in the yard because you already have 40 trucks in the yard, containers. You got to unload them first and all this other crap. And look at there, 146 days. Ha. Now let's look at it from a lean side. Process time. Yeah, you had all this cycle time, but how many days did it take us to process it? And by the way, if they only took 1 hour, I count that as a day. You know, but like in this case with procurement, procurement had 10 days in the cycle, took them 2 days of action, it's actually less than 2 days, and because they had 3 or 4 different levels of approval before someone said, yeah, we can order it. And then they have to get it to the supplier. So the actual time of value in here is down that column, 63 days versus 146. Yeah, I didn't bring that movement down a lot, but this is an overseas movement. And we really don't want to do it by air unless we have to. So the actual processing time is 57% of the total cycle time. What a reduction. That's assuming you could do it. So your goal here is to get as close to 63 as you can. And this is, how do we go through in all of this, identify cycle and process time? We do some mapping, right? Process mapping, we do a value stream map. We do a lot of different things, and I'm not going to show you those here, but there's ways we can figure out what is of value in this process and what is not. I worked for a company, a couple of companies that did this. 10 days in procurement. It's set in people's inboxes, whether they were digital or files printed, and they just acted on it. Nobody acted on it. The first person finally would act on it. The second person would be going on vacation or going away for a day, and they would act on it. You know, just a waste of time. You got to automate that. The trend is to automate all of that up to $1 level, and then automate it where it's not just immediately approved, but they assign responsibility for the people in procurement or any of the functions to do what they have to do, but the clock starts as soon as it hits their box, and they have to get it done. So in a way, this is kind of performance management. It's really, though, nothing more than identifying what is of value in the lead time and what is necessary. So you got all these wasted time, 83 days out of 146. Think about the benefit if you can get it down to 63. Not only is it shorter response time, but there's less inventory, less buffers, less safety stock, which is a type of buffer, but safety stocks have variations, as you know, in demand. But that's great if you can get it down to 63. Now, what are the major activities? And this is not exclusive or inclusive of all of them. These are some major things you do. Yeah, you send out advance notices to the internal and external partners. You got an order that's going to be coming, that's in, hopefully, or coming in, and it's going to be about this amount of volume. You do that to the supplier way ahead of time, because you're going to save 15, 18 days, maybe. The sooner you give them that information, the better off it is. And they can start thinking and planning and all. I call that advanced forecasting, but it's not a purchase order. It's only an estimate of what's going on. And you have to make sure the suppliers, internal people know how to use that. And then the auto timing and all that's the control of how much time it takes. Oh, I'm sorry. My fingers are too big today, I guess, for this. Let me get back to where I'm talking. Sorry about that. So you're going to go through all of these different things. On the other side, supplier, you know, notifying you of when they can get it done, an advance notice of to their suppliers, a lot of different things, keeping you updated. And then the movement, the fastest movement within the criteria for how much it's going to cost. And there's a lot of different things there, and it's interesting. The published prices for shipping and the actual prices may differ based upon demand. If the ship has less, is not as full, or has less, or the plane has is coming back, or whatever the mode is, if it's coming back half empty, you can, if you have the proper portals to the carriers, you can sometimes get that as a lower price. That shipping notice is very important, advanced shipping notice, because then a GM site manager, if they have trained their people correctly and have proper standards, can get that truck loaded unloaded, because while you schedule times for unloading, you always have a lane for the hard orders coming in. So this is the kind of thing I've done in the past that's been very successful. It works even today. One of my customers, a major customer that I teach with the ASCM headquarters, that just shot up a missile this morning, in fact, has used this to cut their lead times. Now, they don't have the problem like a lot of companies because they produce 90% of the items within their own house, but the 10% and all the raw materials have to come from somebody. So they use lead times, this lead time principle. Now, on the right-hand side, that last column is actual reduction cycle. This is what usually happens. You go back and you can't get things as low as you can't get rid of all the waste. You get rid of some of the waste. So you come up in this case, a nice reduction, 80 days versus 146 days. Oh my God. You're probably saying, well, that's not good enough. We should have had 63 days. Well, not really. That's great to have that reduction. So if you use this kind of system, you can actually have significant effect on reducing. And I know what you're saying. You can't do that in procurement. You can't do, in post COVID and all this other stuff. It works. It really does work, but you got to get in and do this. So let me give you some more concepts on this and give you how to go about selecting which one you're going to do first. Okay, so we've had these key concepts and they're all listed there. And as you can see, I have supplier relationships here, and I say supplier relationships back down here because so much of this lead time is external, and you have to really work on that. If you do not have a relationship with your suppliers that are your A items, boy, you need to start off with them. And by the way, you don't start off with all of them, you start off with one. Formal supplier relationship. So I said process mapping earlier. You got to know how to do process map. You just start off with a process. Then you set up the cycle time. Then you set up your what's necessary, the items of value. Then you don't have to go any further, but then I like to go in and put in the systems and all to make it a real value chart and to see how it works out. But the more knowledge you have, the more you can affect change. And if you have the supplier relationships with that, you got two people working, two teams, your team, and you got the suppliers team working to reduce the lead times. And optimization just continues throughout. So let me just I want to close it up in 2 slides and then open it up for questions. How do you select what you're going to do for lead time? Let me just start off by saying, do not do a broad, we're going to have a lean time initiative and everybody needs to reduce it. Okay, you can't force anybody to do anything outside of your function typically, unless you have the rank, or what we call in the military the rank, but the position. But you really got to work with people. It's collaboration. Now, the way we have done it in the past that have worked is that you go look at your ABC classifications. And if you don't have ABC inventory classifications, boy, you got some things to do first. But ABC, take a look at those A items. Look at the A items that have the most significant importance to the bottom line of your company. Take a look at those that have the longest lead times, okay? Take a look at your suppliers. Rank your suppliers. Who are the top suppliers, the biggest suppliers, the ones you may have relationships with or should have? And you want a project, your initial pilot to be with those. Okay. And just take one SKU. Don't take all of them. Take one SKU that's important to you and work on that. And to collectively work on it, have a project, a formal project of improvement. I would start off personally with the initiative internal cross-functional in the company. So everybody who's involved with this, stakeholders and stockholders and all the partners internal, and then I would take it external to that supplier. But I would explain to them why you're doing that and what's the benefit for them and all. And basically you do it this way. Those that jump in and want to do this and have demonstrated improvement, they get more work from you. So when there's in the future, you give them more work. If they don't want to do it, not much you can do about it. But most suppliers are familiar with lead time reduction, so they do it for all the better companies that really want it. Now the benefits and all. So go through it this way. Set up a strategy of how to do it. Work it out. Have a cross-functional collaborative team internal to the organization that are focused on this project. Now, once you are doing the project, you're going to learn things. So you need to capture and do an after-action review of things that worked, things that didn't work. How would you do it differently? And then when you do it that way, you then have enough to roll it out. And then you roll it out not to all of them. You roll it out to each company that meets the criteria that you want. Now, you aren't going to be able to affect lead times typically for those companies that they do the transactional relationship with you. They do one PO and then you never talk to them again until you can't find anybody else and then you get them again. So you really want to do it from the top down, the more important things and all. I know this sounds simplistic, but it actually works. And the last time, the benefits. Benefits of these, there are others, less heartache for sure. Okay. This is nothing more than you're trying to reduce safety inventory. You're trying to get the material there when you need it as quickly as possible. Improve the supplier relationships. Did I say supplier relationships, by the way? Very important. Optimize product ordering, right? Forecast accuracy, all that. A lot of different things. Oh, increase warehouse efficiencies. You're absolutely correct. We in the warehouse business are not a I put the wrong word down there. We're not a warehouse. A warehouse stores things forever. We want to be a distributor. We want to put things together and have manufacturing do that, store it and get it out. So that's the benefits. So I've spent the last 40 minutes kind of laying out the principle for you. I'm gladly can talk more about it one-on-one or in groups or whatever. I can gladly help you and your company do this, or at least get people knowledgeable to do it. It's really one of stop talking about how long the lead time is, do something about it. And I'm sorry, but over the years, I've seen too many people that spend a lot of time talking about it can't happen, it won't happen. You do this, it won't work, and all that other crap. You don't need to do that. You need to go find the situation and fix it. That's what supply chain people do. So let me open up for questions. And any comments you have. You can speak up directly, unmute yourself, or you can put it in chat and we'll address it. And if we run out of time, I will, of course, record those things and put them out and publish it. I'll put a copy of this on the website, the chapter website, in less than a week, if you want to see it again, a recording of it. So what are your questions? Has anybody tried this in their company? Any recommendations from others on systems that work for them? I had a question here. Have you held small workshops to give people an idea on lean manufacturing? Absolutely. And there's a couple other people here I know. Saran is on the line. He's done that throughout his career, doing little workshops or doing major projects to drive improvements. Almost all of our instructors have done that. I tell you.
Hi, Jeff.
How you doing?
Good.
David Tomei he's not on today. I believe he's on a conference call in this other business, but he has done extensive things of that. So if you would like anything like that, just send me a note. Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll get the professionals we have that will do that. Put it out to them, or you can say I want this person, and we can do that. So that's what we can do. Ed, additional questions. Saran, you want to add anything to this?
No, I think you have covered most of it. Very good session, good stuff. And one principle everybody needs to know is the more the lead time, the need for safety stock is always more. So it is the concept in supply chain. The lead time being more means you need more inventory in supply chain. So by reducing lead time, you're also simultaneously reducing the inventory in the system.
But don't forget, you're trying to balance things, so you can't give yourself everything by increasing your buffers and your safety stock, because then it's going to cost you a lot. But you got to have an approach to it. That's right.
Yeah, having buffers, strategic buffers is also a very good idea. It's gaining a lot of importance these days. Identifying the critical components, that is hard to come by, hard to get, and stuff like that. That I've had situations where just for getting one fan, whose lead time was 6 months, coming from somewhere in Europe, assembly operations had to be stopped. These kinds of items. These are the ones where you may have to have buffer stocks. So there are multiple things, all the concepts that you learn in CSCP kind of things, multiple concepts you can join together, and as Jeff rightly said, you can have a campaign or a project to reduce the lead time. Very good.
Anybody else? Thank you, Trent.
Yep.
Yes, hi, Jeffrey. My name is Jeremy Ware. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Quick question for you. Earlier in the webinar, you had mentioned a service agreement that could be posed between the supplier and the customer for a shipment that you're planning, and this could also be put in place after the initial contract has been done. My question is, are there opportunities for, let's see how I want to word this. Are there opportunities for like a lean process or a Kaizen project between the supplier and the customer before that agreement is put in place? So in that lean process, if you determine what your current state is and your ideal state is, working through that between the two parties to create your service agreement after contract? Is that possible? And if you have any examples of that?
Yes. Very good question. As you got from the presentation, I believe you run this thing through the more important your suppliers, the more important suppliers to you financially, the ones you do more than just a PO, you're doing lots of items from them. And in fact, you may not even do a traditional PO. You may just be doing a contract for future services kind of thing. But you really want to make in that initial relationship, as part of that relationship, this service level agreement. And you denote that in your contract or your PO that this is going to be something you do, but it's not just for one PO, it's for everything that they do. So if you could, the most proper way of doing it is to do it as part of this overall relationship. And if you have a customer, let's say you have one customer that has 20 different items they give you, 8% of your expense, and anyway, the items are really critical to your company. your success, well, then you need to come up with that service level agreement. And you do that by saying in the purchase order, in the contract, we will work together to improve our operation. And we'll do that through a service level agreement. And then you give them a template of one, but in the initial concept, before you get the orders for a specific order to do this, you really want to start working on it, start the relationship. It's really one of relationship that you do. And you come to agreed upon lead times. You directing it, the buyer directing it, is never going to happen unless it is a commodity of something. But if it's a very few suppliers and but they're very important to you, it's collaboration. You're not going to get that at a low price, but it's collaboration. They've done this before. Now, the second part of the question, have I done this before? Yes, I have. I'm not going to teach you something I haven't done. I've done this numerous times, and it's one of going in and saying to the supplier, we have an issue, we have a problem, and you just lay out all the facts of why you need to do a lead time reduction, how it affects your business. And you say, I need your help to reduce it. And if they want to play, they will. And if they don't play with you, then maybe you need to go find another supplier. In some cases, you may need to. But typically, they're running a business too. So they understand that. It may take a level above your level or my level. It may be a VP level that needs to be involved in that relationship, or even one higher than that. So that's how you do it. And the service level agreement is it's just trying to improve it, but you have some formal things that you want to do that you have both agreed upon. And you say, this is the things that you're going to do. These are the things that we're going to do. These are the things we're going to do together. You know, that whole motto of collaboration, and then you work toward it. And if you only get down to shave off 25% of the time, that's great. That's a lot better than having 25% more days. So that's how you go about doing it. Feel free to contact me and we can talk more. I've done it not only with suppliers like this, but you can do it also with all kinds of different things that you have with the external partners, 3PLs, 4PLs, service agreements, service companies, and the like. And one last thing, this is real-time stuff. I worked for a company that had a lead time of 187 days. They took these principles, worked with suppliers, only took them 4 months. They got it down to 37 days. That was their initial cut. It took them about a year to get to that point, but they came down that this is our targets and they started working on it. When they got it down there, they continue. Today is 22 days lead time for an item that when they started off a few years back was 187 days. Okay, it works. I've worked it as a consultant, as an instructor, and also a real-time supply chain person. I did this with a 3PL. I did this with the major suppliers as part of a team.
Great improvement and great insight. Thank you for sharing.
You know, the key I will tell you is a couple things: motivation and drive to do that, to stop talking about the problem and fix it. And secondly, it takes that. Did I ever mention supplier relationships? Yeah, it has something to do with supplier relationships. And just one other thing, you know, when they fix it, then what do? You give them a additional volume if you can. A new job comes up and you make sure that they can quote on it. You know, a supplier doesn't have to do their primary thing. You can allow them to subcontract it. They're going to subcontract it anyway down to tier 2 level, our tier 2 level, tier 1 for them, and to do that. So they just pick up more business. Another thought I had, let me interject it. It also helps when you do this, if you can rationalize and optimize your suppliers, the number of suppliers. And if you can cut your suppliers down and let them subcontract to get more volume for the other parts that they currently don't make, but you have a supplier that makes it, that really increases their the support of whatever you're doing. I was in a company in manufacturing where we went from a couple of hundred suppliers. It was only a company that had 20 sites all over America and small 300 to 500 people per site manufacturing. But we all had 200 suppliers. We don't need 200 suppliers. So we went to them and had a talk with the major ones and said, this is what we're trying to do. We'd like to get down to 10 or 12 or 20 suppliers. Make a long story short, not only did we get down to 20 suppliers, we actually got down to 10. They took over many of the jobs at other companies, smaller companies, not smaller, but companies we didn't have a lot of volume with, and they were very happy. So our lead times went from back in the day from 4 weeks down to 3 days. I know what you're thinking. 3 days? How in the hell do you get 3 days? It's because their supplier locations were closer than where their manufacturing were. And they actually had manufacturing closer. So instead of being a half a world apart away, it was right down the street within 1 day's drive or 2 days drive. Additional questions? Very good questions.
Hey Jeff, how you doing? This Will Hamlet. I could
Hey, Will.
I could give you an example of here at the company I work for. We were struggling with a part real bad. They just couldn't get it to us on time, and you know, they didn't want to tell us why. And like you keep saying with the relationship with your suppliers, we finally got the why, and the why was they were having problems getting a part, one of the metal raw parts out of Asia. Well, of course, the company I work for, I mean, we buy a ton of metal out of Asia. And so, you know, we're a big enough company. We just started buying the part for them and delivering that part. You know, it's just a part of the whole part that we need. But now, you know, we don't have any issues with that part being late because the part that was putting them behind, we now supply them and we get a much cheaper rate.
And not only that, y'all touch different people. You overlap some, you touch some, and that's a win-win for both, like you said.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. That's a great example. Great example. And it's not one of these models that you have to do it this. You, whatever it takes you to get to the end that makes sense, you do it. That's a great example.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. As long as the solution is permanent, then it is a solution. There's no, you know, especially here, a short-term fix is useless, you know, because it's just going to come around. Everything we do here, we do it again. You know, we might not build that truck for 3 years, but we'll build it again in 3 years. So if we just fix it today, it doesn't do us no good. So that's why we've really tried to focus on root cause and corrective action when it comes to our suppliers and our parts, because it really does make a difference. Maybe not today, but that, you know, like you're saying, that digging in, that research, it will make a difference for tomorrow.
thank you for sharing it with the group. And just one other note on this. Yes, you got to dig in and do some things and all, but this is not something you have to wait months. You just need to jump in and start fixing it, start working on fixing it. And it's a team approach. You know, at Apple, what we do there is procurement has desk in the operations department. We have desks in the procurement department. All the meetings we have, there's our other internal partners in the organizations can come in. And they do come in. They may not come in and sit down. They may come in and say, what's the new business coming up? What do I need to be looking for? Those kind of things. We do the same thing with our external partners, 2,000 of them twice a day. Yeah, we pass everything electronically, but if we need to talk, because the digital hasn't gotten there yet, we do that. And that just helps build that relationships. and then you can get these things solved. That's good that y'all dug deep and finally found out the reason. Sometimes the reason is not any of that. It's money. They don't have the cash flow needed when the need comes there. So you work with them, you identify it, and then maybe you put the two finance people together. They can work out something. You don't have to give them money. You just give them a lower rate, or you give them as a recommendation, finance to finance, talking to their banks or whatever. Let me tell you, it works. Well, anything else before I close up here? David, David had to run. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much for everybody from participating in our first webinar. Good turnout today. Good questions. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll put it on the website. If you need any future assistance, want a training course, want anything from us, we're willing to help you here at ASCM Triangle Chapter. Thank you very much, and y'all have a good day.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Hey, Donna. I see Donna left already. Good.